Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I'm James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me, Fox 40's Sean Cunningham. I don't have my mic, so it's different. What's going on?
I'm not well, James. I'm just not well. I had a pretty fabulous birthday yesterday, and things were really good in life. And then my baseball team decided to take a big heaping dump all over the birthday cake. Carlos Correa is now a Met. What a difference a week makes. And I'm ready to jump off the Golden Gate, man, for my baseball fandom. What's going on with you, man?
Oh, not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. I saw it last night, and of course, I knew it was your birthday, and you share a birthday with De'Aaron Fox, who just turned 25.
No, De'Aaron Fox shares a birthday with me. Let's get that right. It was my birthday
true.
first. Yeah,
That's
okay.
true. That's true. So, what a downer night for the San Francisco Giants. Before we get too far into this, we should probably introduce Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
I am doing good, guys. Is there any explanation on why this happened? It's something to do with physicals,
Brenden, I think it depends on who you ask. There's a lot we don't know, but this much we know. The Giants gave Carlos Correa a contract that the Mets immediately gave him also. So whether it was cold feet or something in the physical that predates him as a baseball player, whatever it is, they are the laughingstock of baseball, and they show they can't close. Farhan Zaidi is a GM who can't get anyone. This ownership group is forever frugal and cheap, and this whole we're going to spend money. Clearly they don't have all their ducks in a line, and they're not together as an organization. It is a absolute abortion in the Bay Area.
It's not good. It's not good. You know what? Like I was walking in today, and I ran into Jesse, our producer here at ESPN 1320. I'm in studio. I'll be on the radio at 3:00. We had to fit these things in when we fit them in. But he was like, "Hey, are you checking out this Giant stuff?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, like I saw it late last night when it started to unfold." And you know what? It reminds me of the Sharif Abdul-Rahim situation.
Abdur,
yes. So Sharif signed an MLE, a mid-level exception deal with it wasn't even the Brooklyn Nets, it was the New Jersey Nets, right, at that time. And then he went in for his physical, and they voided his contract, and he became a free agent out of nowhere, and the Kings signed him, I think, to a 5-year, $25 million deal. Something around that mark, and they saw something in his knee they didn't like, and like when you're signing a 13-year contract with a guy for $350 million, and I know a lot of people were like, hey, we'll just throw away the back end of that money. That's still a ton of money. And one of the things I would like to know is if the Giants medical staff wouldn't sign off, is he insurable? And that could be one of the issues. Like, is he insurable as a player? Can you get your money back? Where, the Kings faced this situation that Sharif just couldn't go. Like, at a certain point in his career, like, the knee did become too much of an issue, and I think they got him to medically retire for the final 2 years of his deal, and they got basically his money wiped off the books and an insurance policy to cover it. And I think they got injury exceptions for his final 2 years, but it's something that you are like cognizant of. It's just really weird that the Giants hadn't done their homework beforehand and didn't know that this was a possibility, and threw, like over $500 million at a guy, and next thing you know, they are the laughing stock of the league.
Yeah, and I like that there is a Kings kind of like you can find a side story or something that's kind of tangential, but I will say, like, in we love doing the business of sports, business of basketball. It's a segment we do, but like you think about this, whether you were for Correa or against Correa, thinking the money was too much money, the commitment was too long, put that all aside. it's the hapless mismanagement of how this whole thing has played out. Knowing a little bit of, if you know any of the history of like the team, and I mean, hey, it was just 2 years ago they won 107 games by some fluke magic luck, and then they were going to, you know, try to sell their team a bill of goods. I mean, you notice the double down of a really young and inexperienced team that they didn't add anything to the 107. So there's a lot of fans that were very, very upset. You saw empty seats. You saw, and then you've seen this organization strike out, whether it be Giancarlo Stanton, Bryce Harper, Aaron Judge, and you think now Carlos Correa, and if it was your own doing, and maybe you have a basketball or a baseball ops in this place, and ownership that could be on different pages. Like, it's just an absolute nightmare situation for an organization and a fan base that at one point was really not that long ago probably the premier in all of baseball, and right now it's kind of embarrassing, and it's teetered on embarrassing for a little while, and it's gone full-fledged embarrassing over the past 24, not even 24 hours. So it's not so much, I mean, for people who are listening and you may not be baseball fans, just, man, it just shows you how things can get really wonky in this business, and how some organizations do it right and do their due diligence and do all these things, but you have to be all on the same page. And there's a lot we don't know about what's happening with this Carlos Correa situation, but if you're the Giants, you better be transparent. You better get out in front of this, and putting a statement out today saying that we can't talk about what we found on the physical and we'll just leave it at that and wish them the best. That ain't it.
Yeah, but I mean, it is a HIPAA issue. Like, you can't go.
No. And here's the thing, James. Like, yeah. But that again, then why did you get that far? How did you get that far? How is this a problem? You know, that's what you have. There's many more questions that come up. It should not come down to the pending physical. So
yeah, I get it. I mean, we even had the situation here in Sacramento, like long before Brenden was born, where the Kings signed Chuck Hayes to a contract. Then the physical came after the contract, and they found a heart murmur, and the Kings had to rescind the contract. And then a couple of days later, they were able to figure out some workaround with his heart issue. And lo and behold, Chuck Hayes was not only signed, but I think the Kings gave him an extra like $1.5 million.
Another $1 million. Yeah.
Yeah. Just threw a little extra on top to say, sorry about that, big guy. You know, our medical staff found something and then didn't. And then, you know, either way, I think it's kind of a lesson that pro sports franchise have to deal with. Brenden, I'll throw it to you in this way. The Kings are a team that, like, Sean just rattled off all of these superstars that the Giants chased and didn't get. But the Kings are a team that also likes to have their name mentioned every single time there's a player that's available. Like, what do you make of that? Because, you know, we'll just call this the business of basketball segment, because I think it's an interesting segment that we're going through anyways, where we're talking about something that's not specifically Kings, but now we can relate it to Kings-related stuff. But Brenden, what are your thoughts? Because it doesn't always feel good if you're, you know, a Harrison Barnes or a Rashawn Holmes, or name that King that was a Buddy Hield that was mentioned in like 7 different trades before you actually either got traded or didn't get traded, and you're just kind of left there hanging.
I think from the player's perspective, it's kind of just the nature of the business. And I think if there's still healthy communication between a front office, a coaching staff, and all the rostered players, that you can work through that just fine. And each person's going to handle that differently. But to me, like the Kings being linked to so many people, their name being thrown out a lot throughout the past couple years, just feels similar to, or I think to how money comes from the Daryl Morey tree. And I feel like this is a very similar thing that we always have seen in the past with Morey and continue to see. Like, Houston's game plan while he was there was, we're going to try and trade for stars, and maybe they don't fit great, but we're just going to get these talented players and then put them together and try to build through trades. And I think that you're seeing a little bit of the same thing in Philadelphia. Ironically, Harden obviously being in both places, but to me, it goes back to, or the first thing I think of is just that connection to the Daryl Morey tree, and it feels like a similar parallel there with McNair.
Can I say something else real quick? Think about this. Let's pretend this is the NBA for a moment. Now, while it's true that the Giants never formally announced that they had a done deal with Carlos Correa, I want to paint a picture real quick, and this is why I think people should be so pissed. Yeah, you have the reports that come out. You're an organization. You can say that you didn't announce it. That's fine. But then you announce a press conference that you're not putting a name to or a reason why you're having said press conference. I was supposed to attend said press conference, but you don't have a reason for it, right?
That was weird in itself.
Yeah, very strange. Understandable. If you're a fan, you're like, okay, well, there's a press conference. You don't know why. All right, great. KNBR 680 in San Francisco is owned by the San Francisco Giants. They have ownership in that station, and likewise with the Giants. It's not just a flagship station partnership. It's actual. There's an ownership stake there. They had announced that Carlos Correa was going to be on that radio program at 8:30 in the morning before the press conference. The flagship station, who has an ownership stake, all that stuff. Like, if you're a fan and you were waiting for any indication from your team that Carlos Correa was going to be a Giant, that was your indication, and that was probably your green light to be like, oh, I'm going to go buy season tickets now after this horrible, horrible season. Well, now you feel hoodwinked. Hopefully you can get a refund on those season tickets, because they're not nearly as attractive as they were about 15 hours ago.
Yeah, it's really interesting, too, because baseball, it's so difficult to build around one or two stars, right? Like, if you have a really, really good pitching staff and you can go up the middle with, like, just really good defensive players at shortstop and second base and center field, and you can win a bunch of games just by doing that. If you have a great pitching staff, you got a solid bullpen, you can win a bunch of games just, playing small ball, basically. But, I have no idea, like, for a team like the Giants, where you go from there. I mean, it's absolutely brutal. But, again, I felt that way with the Kings so many times as well. Like, how do you get out of this perpetual cycle? And, it reminds me, at this point, like, the Giants are forced into almost a complete rebuild. But I've heard people say, oh, the Kings have never done a full rebuild. They've never done a full rebuild. And I don't understand that. Like, did people just forget, like, 2016, when they traded DeMarcus Cousins? They traded Omri Caspi. They waived Matt Barnes. Rudy Gay blew his Achilles, and they went into the next season with I think it was, so even that season, the 2016 season, they had drafted Scal and Malachi and Yorgos Papagiannis. Then the next season, and then they traded for Buddy Hield. And then you get to the next season and they draft De'Aaron Fox. They draft Harry Giles and Justin Jackson and Frank Mason. They get Bogdan Bogdanovic to come over. Like, if that's not a rebuild, I don't know what is. If you're going to go into the next season, the 2017 season, with basically 10 players, if you count, the Willie Cauley-Steins of the world and the other guys that they had from the previous roster, like, all of these first, second, third-year players, that's a complete rebuild. I don't know why people keep thinking. I mean, that's how you got Marvin Bagley, because you rebuilt it and you got the second pick in the draft. So I'm still confused why people believe that there was never a rebuild here in Sacramento. The fact that a bunch of those players didn't work out and weren't NBA players and are no longer in the league, that's another issue. That's an issue of who your GM was and your scouting department and all the other things that go into building a team. But King specific, like, Monty McNair took over like a complete reset, but I don't know if it was so much. Like, he didn't have to tear it all the way down to nothing, because he did have at least a couple of pieces to work with and a couple of trade pieces to work with as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% on the rebuilding from previous years. I think maybe it doesn't look like what typically people have in mind of tearing everything down in years prior. And I think there were examples of years where they could have chosen to do that, but then maybe instead went a little more towards trying to make something happen in the immediate. like I think of like Dwayne Dedman, Trevor Ariza, Corey Joseph signings. Like, I think there was a debate at that time of like, should you be trying to win right now, or should you still be trying to maybe acquire a better draft pick and try to build up that way. But the point that they've reached now is obviously a place that I would think that they're content with, and you keep trying to build from here. They're certainly not at their ending point or anything, but I think that we have seen Monty McNair build a pretty successful team at this point, centered around obviously Fox and Sabonis, who have been playing phenomenally, but getting all these other complementary pieces is what's going to be important to continue growing from here.
Yeah, Sean, like, where are you at? Because this team does well. I guess I'll even ask this question, and then I'll let both of you guys answer it. Like, we get who they are at this point, and you know that they're still missing a piece or two. Like, is this a moment for the Kings to go all in? Is this a moment for them to make more substantial, or even like it to bring it back to the baseball analogy? Like, we see that they're going to enter the stretch run here, and they're right in it. Should you go get the extra pieces to push them over the top, like we see in baseball all the time, which sometimes works in basketball, but sometimes doesn't? Or are you like, okay, there's still one major piece away, so why don't you take that swing regardless of what it does to your chemistry today, and try to reset this, try to put yourself on a path to win a bunch of games in 2 or 3 years as opposed to where you're at right now?
Yeah, it's interesting because for sure, I mean, I think they signified the all-in moment when they made the trade for Domantas Sabonis. So, as was the case last year, you have to kind of double down off of that and continue that belief that when you make that franchise-altering shift, like, you've got essentially 2 years to, make this thing right. Not only to keep Domantas Sabonis, but to see if it can work with him and De'Aaron Fox and Mike Brown and all these components. So yeah, you need to be all in 100%. And I just don't know if there's a move that can be made, because I still feel like they're a significant piece away from really being an elite team. But right now, I think they're proving to the league that they are a relevant, contending, promising team. I said last week, I think it's pretty. I think what's become clear to me is that I wouldn't want to face this team in a series. I mean, one-offs are what they are, but I think this team has the type of depth, the type of they play a type of style, and they've improved enough on defense to where this would be a tough out for just about, I don't say every team, but for a vast majority of the teams that would be contending in the Western Conference. I think in a series, this would be a tough out. So I like the competitive spirit from this team. I like the talent on this team. They obviously have some glaring needs. I don't know how. I think we still have some question marks in terms of durability and fortitude. I think the physicality issue is still kind of a thing. We might have thought that, hey, this team plays with a little bit of an edge, and lately we've kind of seen that wane a little bit. So there might be a little bit more of a question mark there. But for sure, I think if there's a move out there to be made, they're not gonna hesitate. But I wonder what that is. I don't think that they can add the type of piece that ultimately they need, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like they really need another strong presence on this team, and what I mean by that is likely upgrading a certain piece that they're fine with now, but almost bringing in another quasi-star player to pair with Fox and Sabonis, particularly probably at the 3, that would really push this team to bigger heights. And I just don't know that they're going to be capable of doing that.
I think if we're talking about eventual contention, that they do need another star, right? Like, neither one of Fox or Sabonis are somebody that is just the top of the top, cream of the crop when it comes to stars, that's going to just carry you and get complementary pieces from there to fit it. Like, I think the way that they take that next big leap is getting another player of that caliber. It becomes a little bit of a 3-headed beast from there. And then you kind of reevaluate your surrounding pieces after the fact.
Yeah, because I think the biggest question for me is, like, if I'm looking at this team right now, it's such a delicate balance, right? You don't want to trash the chemistry. You don't want to destroy sort of what they're building or the excitement that they have within the locker room. But you're also faced with this dilemma, like, could you go out and I don't know that they're available, but it's something that I brought up on previous pods. Like, could you go out and trade with a team like Charlotte and bring back a Mason Plumlee and a PJ Washington, and it would probably cost you, some items in your war chest. But again, we're talking about a restricted free agent this summer and an unrestricted free agent in the final year of his deal. But they're two pieces that probably would complement this roster perfectly and at least solidify what you're doing right now and put you in a stronger position to hold on to a five or a six in the Western Conference. But you would also know that the Plumlee deal would be like short term, and you may or may not be able to bring him back next season, and then and he's also 32 years old, going on 33. But then also whether PJ is part of a future plan that you're gonna sort of build around, and I would like caution people to think that he's not as good as a guy like Harrison Barnes. He's not that level of competitor. He's just he's a solid rotational player, but do you do something like that where you might be able to get that done with peripheral pieces that aren't playing right now, and some second round picks? Maybe if you really had to stretch, like a future first, but like a way off, like protected 2028, 29 pick that dissolves after that. So I think it's an interesting dilemma, though, right? If you're Monty, because if you're going to be all in right now, you don't want Mike Brown, which is going to be the next topic of discussion, like trying to figure out which one of Chimezi Metu, Neemias Queta, or Rashawn Holmes is going to be your backup center for 13 minutes a night. Like, you should actually be in a point where that question isn't still floating out there.
Well, I think if let's just go back to the Charlotte thing, for example. While I'm not, shouting from a mountaintop for that to not happen or for that to happen, to me, that move doesn't make them, like, you're still not a contender with that type of move. Like, that's not going to, like, put you over the top per se. You just kind of maybe round out some of the loose ends a little bit better for this season, and maybe you're a little bit more primed to compete a little bit. Like if James, how many wins does that give you? How many more than what you have now? Like, if that gets you 3 more wins, like, how deep does that get you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would solidify you as a 5-6 in the current league, because I think it would add depth to a roster that already has depth, but it would be actual depth that's going to play. Like, those two guys are going to be 2 of your top 8 players, and Plumlee actually blocks shots. He actually knows how to run look, Jay Triano's offense. Like,
we get all that.
A ton of sense. Yeah.
My point is, it's not the type of move to me that's going to put you into an elite setting in the West at all. I think it's something that could certainly help. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not giving away too much for it. And I think you could do better, quite honestly. I think there's probably moves to be made that you could do that's better. I think it classifies as the move I mentioned a minute ago. I don't think there's the move that there's the move that they need to make. There's the acquisitions they need to get, and I just don't think that they have the capability to get them. If that makes sense. Like, I think there's, we've kicked around people before over the past year, and if you're listening to this podcast and how we feel about some of the talented threes in this league, be it Pascal Siakam or Bradley Beal or even OG Anunoby, who's come up before. I just don't think any guys like that are really all that possible. And then if you loop PJ Washington in that, he's not in that class, and I don't want people to get like
I agree.
Yeah, I don't want them to get all excited for the
forward.
Untapped.
Correct. Yeah, he's a third forward, and Mason Plumlee on a good team is a backup center. And
the thing about Plumlee that
fits. Yeah.
Correct, because he can. They play a style with Domantas Sabonis on the floor, and when he comes off the floor with Plumlee, you can play a very similar style to that because he can move the ball. And as you saw here just the other day, I mean, he's a He's a tremendous fit for just about any style system. So, yeah, I don't know that it makes him like incrementally better.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it does help, but it's definitely not like bringing you into the next tier of teams, right? I think it just like makes you better within that same tier that we're already talking about of like a 5-6 seed at best, right? And because I do think these complementary pieces matter. Like I think we've seen over the last few games, and Coach Brown has been really clear. Like this backup center thing is a problem right now. Like there's
Yeah.
nobody that is filling that, and I think that if you did have those. I know we're only talking about like a dozen minutes here, but I think that can change the tide of a game. Like you talked about having to double team Marvin Bagley in Detroit, or in the Toronto game. I thought the backup center position made that for a really tough night, but they were still able to pull it out. We saw this same issue in Charlotte. And like I think that while it doesn't catapult you into the next tier or anything, I still think it does make a decent difference on nights.
Can I
Yeah.
say this too? Can I
Yeah.
say that it's the thing that scares me? It goes hand in hand, but I don't want people so much focusing on, oh man, they don't really have a backup center that can do that. Blah blah blah. The worst part is no, you can't have Domantas Sabonis playing 40 plus minutes a game. That to me is more problematic than anything. So even if it's, hey, we don't really have a solution as a backup center, well then, in the meantime, playing him upwards of 40 minutes and more a game, we're going to run that guy into the ground. I mean, you're relying on him for so much. I would almost challenge Mike Brown as like, hey, there may not be anyone walking through that door to save you. What do you do in the meantime? And it may be you have to completely shift your system as a basketball unit when he's off the floor, which they've done at times, and I think it is a trial by fire and try to see what's out there, try to see what they can accomplish, and it can look clunky. And I think they've went with, they rode the hot hand, and you see Keita out there. I don't know that that's an answer at all, but the more worrisome, and again they go hand in hand, is just you can't run Sabonis like that, man. It's not gonna work.
Yeah, well, and I think we're watching it play out right now. I mean, Sabonis, as we're doing this pod, he's likely going to play against the Los Angeles Lakers. I was at shoot around this morning. He was at shoot around. Harrison Barnes was at shoot around. They were joking around. They were shooting. They were on the court. That's a good sign that both of them are going to suit up tonight against the Lakers. But the fact is, it kind of gives you a glimmer into the window. The last maybe 5 games, we've seen Mike Brown searching for that reserve, but we're talking about who's going to play 13 minutes a night. We're not talking about who's going to play 36 if Domantas Sabonis goes down for 2 weeks or a month. So there's that inevitability that, players get hurt, and you're hoping that somehow he plays 82 games, but it's so much weight to put on one guy's shoulders to make sure that he's out there playing 82 games. And, De'Aaron Fox has missed, 3 games already this season. You've got 3 guys that can play backup point guard. But the fact that they haven't been able to really not only connect a player that can fill in the 13 or 14 minutes behind Sabonis, but they don't have a game plan if he is out. And, I said this to you guys, I think it was during the summer, and I've said it a couple of times, and I think people think I'm absolutely crazy when I say this, but the player who's the most similar in style of play is clearly Keita. He steps on the court, and all of a sudden he's setting the same mean screens. The problem is he's so raw, and you don't know really what you have, and you don't know if he can stay on the court. And I know, Sean, we talked about this the other day. You wanted someone to go kick him in the shin and fire him up. But I would point out that when he came in against Joel Embiid, he was fired up and got 3 fouls in 45 seconds. And so you're tightrope walking. How do you develop a player? How do you get him on the court when he probably is the better fit out of everybody, but at the same time, he's so green and you're worried about all these avenues. But then when he got comfortable, he was rebounding. He was flying all over the court trying to block shots. Was he out of position? Sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the Kings haven't had a shot blocker on the court all season long, and it was the one block he did have was spectacular, but the other 5 that he went high, he redirected traffic around the rim. No one wants to go in. He's a huge man. No one wants to go in there amongst the trees with him.
It's what Whiteside did. I mean, Whiteside got, poked fun at a lot here, but when he was on the court, he mattered. He made a difference. He had a better feel for the game, which is just incredible to say. but like even Keita, you can see Keita doesn't have that feel for the game yet. He knows he's the biggest guy on the floor. He knows he can have that type of impact, but there's a go get it, and he lets it come to him. It doesn't have that feel yet. And yeah, I want to see that guy mad. I want to see that guy have a tenacity to him, because everything is so nice. He's so nice. and I want to see him get mean. And I've seen it a couple times in the G League. I mean, I've seen it, when he, hey, that's James Wiseman over there, and he just punked me a couple times, and then he goes and gets it. So, yeah, sometimes that's like, if that's what it takes right from the get-go, hey, have your guard go up there and just kick him really hard in the ankle. Well, I don't care what it is. And if that's what it takes to get him going, do it.
Maybe he's a Giants fan and he'll be mad today.
You know what? Maybe Portugal loves them some Giants fans. So come on.
Yeah.
Never know. I think that the opportunity is good for him when it comes to just being a learning process, getting to go back and watch the film. But it's not great for the Kings in the meantime. He hasn't been great in his minutes. He's had the flashes, which I think are nice, like that block that James mentioned was on LaMelo, and then the next possession he had a really tough finish through contact. But outside of that stretch, the rest was pretty tough. Holmes is the weird one to me, and will continue to be the weird one. Like, we know out of all these guys, Metu, Holmes, Len, Keita, like, I guess we don't know, but most recently Holmes was a starting NBA center, and now he can't fit as a backup. We've talked about the handful of reasons that we think that it's not working. That's the one to me that I'm circling and hoping it can. And I would try Len. I would assume they didn't try Len last game because he just got back from his non-COVID related illness and was really sick throughout the course of that, apparently. But if you're going to try everything, try everything. Like, you have Alex Len sitting there too. Try it.
Yeah. Okay. So I talked to Alex. I've talked to him a couple of times over the last 2 weeks. Well, they're gone for the trip. So right before they went on the trip, first of all, the stuff that guy's dealing with off the court is nuts. Like he has very close family members that he hasn't heard from in 4 or 5 months in the Ukraine. That he has no idea if where they're at, if they're alive, what's happened to them. So I think the human element with Alex Len is one thing. The other thing is he's always a player historically that takes a long time to get back from injury or illness. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to put it into it. Just everyone's body's different, and that dude is like a legitimate 7 foot tall, maybe 7'1". I do know that he lost 10 pounds with the illness. And the Kings actually left him in New York City at one point because he was so sick and they couldn't get the fever to break. And so they left him in his hotel room, clearly with people overseeing him and making sure he was healthy. But they had to go on with the trip, and then he met them in Detroit at some point. But look, that's going to be one of the options going forward. Can you get Alex Len back in the mix? He is a shot blocker. He is a guy who at one point shot 37% from three. He does understand how to go out and set high screens, which is something that some of these guys have shown that they don't understand. But it really is becoming more of an issue that you got 4 centers outside of, or 3 or 4 at this point. I don't know how many they have. They've got 4 centers behind Domantas Sabonis, and I don't think anyone's comfortable if any of them are the starting center if Domantas Sabonis goes down for any length of time, let alone if they can play 13 or 14 minutes a night to take some of the stress off of him. And so it's something that has to be reevaluated, but I think very quickly, as opposed to more of a long-term stance while Mike Brown tinkers with the rotation from one night to the next.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the Rashawn Holmes thing to me is quite puzzling, and I feel like in this system with Mike Brown, he hasn't really had the opportunity. I think Mike would probably push back on that, but I don't think he's had enough of the opportunity. I'd kind of like to see what that looks like for about 5 to 6 games, and I think you've built up enough equity in the schedule to be able to do so. And again, I think Chimezie Metu, for the most part, has played pretty well. I know he's had some stumbles of late and kind of earned himself out of the rotation a little bit, but I think you look at the games coming up, and the Lakers are obviously tonight as we record this, and you have no Anthony Davis isn't going to play, but you do have someone like Damon Jones who's enormous. So in a game like that, Nimi has a little bit of experience against Damon Jones, so go ahead and play him against him. But there are teams that tend to go smaller, and if you go smaller, well, maybe that's a Chimezie Metu type game to where they might run a little more. It may fit his style of play a little bit more. Alex Len, to me, is a break glass in case of emergency type center, because I just don't think you can rely on him if you're relying on Alex Len for your team at this stage in his career, you're in trouble. So to me, the only answers really are see what you have in Nimi, and then you try to figure out Rashawn and Mezzi in the meantime. But hopefully it could be a platooning among those three, and until you either find an answer, a solution. I know DeMarcus Cousins' names keep coming up a lot. I don't think that's happening at all. But it is fun because if you want someone who can play like Sabonis in a lot of ways, I mean, that's a guy who can really pass the ball. So you can see why that name gets floated out there a lot. I mean, you really could, because but that he's not DeMarcus Cousins of old anymore. He's not what you remember from years and years and years ago. But there's a lot that comes with DeMarcus.
Yeah, and I want to point out, too, for people in Portugal who watch this, it's something that the Kings have talked about when it comes to Keegan Murray. That, if you look at a team like the Detroit Pistons or the Orlando Magic, and you just circle like Jaden Ivey and you circle Paolo Banchero, those guys are allowed to go out on the court and make mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake, because it doesn't matter if their team wins or loses. It actually is better if they make more mistakes and their team loses, and so they're allowed to learn. It's just two different types of like what's happening. Like they're two different types of franchises, so they're able to play through their mistakes and learn through mistakes. And for young players, that can be a really good thing. But there's also like what Keegan Murray is going through, where you're not allowed to play through mistakes because wins do matter in Sacramento, and you're trying to win. You're trying to make the playoffs. And whether that's right or wrong, it's the reality of the situation that they're in. And Neemias comes into play in this because, like, the Kings don't have 20 minutes a night for him to try to figure it out. They just don't. That's not the way it's going to go, because if he can't figure it out in 5 games, and all of a sudden they're not a playoff team anymore, and if he's cost them games, and so there isn't this moment where you're allowing a player to play through all of these mistakes and get better. He's got to go out there and fill a role, play really hard. Mike Brown was very specific. He's like, I need a guy who's going to go out there, who's going to rebound, who's going to understand the defense, who's going to set screens, and who's not going to go out and pick up 3 fouls in 3 minutes. Like, I can't have a guy go out at the end of the first quarter, play 3 minutes, and give up a bunch of free throws because we're already in the penalty because of him. Or we open the second quarter and he picks up 2 quick fouls, and next thing you know, we're almost in the bonus again. And the other team shooting free throws the whole second quarter. He's like, so I need someone who's going to be able to stay on the court and help us in these moments. And again, this is without even talking about whether or not Sabonis is going to play or not. We're just talking about that guy who's going to play 12 to 14 minutes a night and help out. And so I think that's something that, like, again, if you're new to basketball and you're new to the NBA, this is typical. Like, what's happening with Neemias Queta is very typical for young players, especially young bigs. Young bigs always take longer to develop than guards and forwards. And so he's going to have a very short leash, and it's really because he's playing for a team that has different aspirations than a team that's just playing to try to get a really good draft pick and add another really good player next season.
They need him to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he needs to go
when
out there.
He's out there, he has to be perfect.
Which is an unrealistic
expectation. He has to bring energy.
Right.
Yes, yeah, and he has to bring energy and everything else, right? He has to come out there and be ready from the opening The opening moment he steps on the court, he's got to come out, grab a couple of rebounds, be a defensive player, and then if he gets a shot, he gets a shot. It's not even about what he's going to score. It's very much about energy and effort and not fouling and just doing the basics like rebounding.
Do you guys think there's any downside to him not continuing to, and I'm sure he will later in this year, but like get reps in Stockton throughout this? Obviously the competition level's night and day, but that's a place where he can go and play through mistakes, right?
I personally think there's a lot of downside. I want him to be in Stockton as much as possible because he didn't get that opportunity last year. And he's not, look, him coming in and spelling a moment here or there, I don't think is going to be in his best interest. And I think they're just hoping for lightning in a bottle at that point, and to really hope that he's made a lot of strides, which I think he has. And I think it is true that the game has slowed down for him a lot. And that's why I wanted to talk to him this past practice after he appeared in that Hornets game, because as I mentioned just a minute ago, I feel like they're putting him in an impossible position to have to be perfect every single time he's on the floor. And as James mentioned, like, he acclimated to the game after about 4 minutes of action, but it's too late at that point. So
yeah, you don't have that much time. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it goes back to like Terrence Davis. Terrence Davis comes out, he misses 3 shots. He may not get another look because he's either hot or cold. And this team just isn't going to wait around and hope that somebody figures it out and moves through. I mean, you got to, like, it's very specific to this team. Harrison Barnes is questionable. Again, I think Harrison Barnes is going to play. But to a lesser degree, I mean, the Kings kind of had the same situation there. If you're coming into tonight's game against the Los Angeles Lakers with the idea that LeBron James is going to be defended for a large stretch by Harrison Barnes, what do you do if you're the Kings? I mean, KZ Okpala has shown at least he can do some things, but we're talking about a guy who's going to outweigh him by at least 50 or 60 pounds at the same position, and who is like not just a first ballot Hall of Famer, but like on Mount Rushmore of NBA players in general. Even if he is 38 years old, 37 years old, it doesn't matter. LeBron is still partially LeBron. Like, what do you do if you're Mike Brown in this situation?
I don't know that there's a good answer.
Can I give you one?
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't worry about it. It's LeBron James. The Lakers are absolute trash. You have no Anthony Davis. You probably don't have Russell Westbrook. You can't worry about that team. You just got embarrassed by a team that lost 8 straight because either you were overconfident, you thought you could just kind of,
trick it off.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to find a different. Thank you for finding the radio-friendly version. Yeah, well, and DeMarcus too. Yeah, so and it's funny because I didn't really get to ask Mike this directly. I asked players how they interpreted his comment saying that loss to the Hornets was a reality check, and I was curious what he meant. Did he mean that, hey, it's a reality check is we ain't as good as you think you are, or the reality check is you can't trick off a game like that thinking that you've already won before you take in the floor, meaning you're taking your opposition for granted, or playing to the level of to your opposition, which is, oh, that's not a good team coming in here, we'll win, we don't need to play hard. Or, do you think it's just a one-off? And I personally think it's more of a one-off, meaning that, you're coming, like, there's an old adage, and there's a lot of them in the NBA, but like the first game home from a long road trip is almost like a road game because you're not acclimated to home again, and you're like just getting settled and you're coming off of time zones. So to me, it looked like a team that didn't respond well to some physicality, looked very groggy, and was just kind of going through some of the motions. And they went into a team that was just licking their chops at the Kings coming home. The long way of that, what I'm saying is, the trickle over effect is how do they defend LeBron James without Harrison Barnes? They don't. Like, you're not going to. You're gonna try to throw anything you can at him, but if that's the only guy that goes off in that game, so be it. Every other, you need to pummel the Lakers tonight. The Lakers should not have any signs of life if they don't have Anthony Davis. Russell Westbrook probably won't play. He was at shoot around just sitting off to the side today. But if LeBron James is all they have, guess what? You need to stomp this team. Even if their team was together, when that Lakers team has been healthy, they've still shown they're not that damn good. You need to come out and you need to stomp this team.
Yeah, Brendan, I was going to ask you, like, Mike Brown was cryptic about the Charlotte loss. For me, like, realistically, Charlotte's a much better team. When they stepped on the court and their starting five is out there, you're like, okay, this isn't a starting five that should be like 7-23 or whatever they were, and lost 8 straight, and you're getting them on the second night of a back to back. I don't care. That team is talented, but then when we got to post game and then when we got to practice yesterday, Brennan, I think you picked up on it too. Mike was being cryptic that it was almost like he wanted to call out a couple of his players for being soft under the basket and not taking charges and not taking, not doing what they were supposed to do, like backing away from like crucial moments.
Yeah, to me, the reality check primarily comes on defense. Like I think they've been a lot better there, but it takes like constant engagement and just willingness there. Like there's a lot of times where the guards are going to be asked to put their body on the line and take a charge or try to go up vertical. And there's a lot of times in that Charlotte game, we just saw them kind of flying by, or maybe just being a step late to that. So I think that's where they need to make sure that they stay locked in. I think that they've improved defensively. They're up to 19th in defensive rating. And I think if you take out those first 4 games, that number looks even better. But to your point, the starting lineup of Charlotte is fine. Their bench is horrible. And you weren't able to take advantage of that at all. So I think that
Nick Richards killed the Kings.
Nick Richards went crazy. Yeah. And that's offensive rebounds, which is another effort thing.
Yeah, but let's be honest, too. He also had he gave up at least 6 points, if I'm not mistaken, on goaltends. Like, I think he had 13 points, but he also gave up, like, a whole bunch of points on goaltends. I was shocked. I've never seen a player get called for so many goaltends in a game.
And they were in quick succession, too.
Yeah, you're like, oh, look at that. The Kings are scoring strictly on mistakes by a big man who just keeps like slapping the ball after it hits the glass.
And so many of the Hornets points were dunks, and hey, Mike Brown, when he keeps it a buck, he said it at practice. I mean, he called out Sabonis for a guy who put up some monster numbers in that game. He called out Sabonis, says he wasn't good. He was not good for us on the other end of the floor, and he was right, especially with all the backdoor stuff that was happening, and that's why I was asking. Malik Monk and I forget who and we talked to, but and even Mike Brown, like were those characteristics of just that game, or had that been kind of stuff you had started to see more and more from the road trip that were just maybe coming to a head here against the Hornets? And I mean, the Hornets, look, he credited Steve Clifford. He credited that team for being whole again, as close to whole as they can be without, Miles Bridges. But Gordon Hayward's healthy again. You've got LaMelo Ball, who I don't know if he was on a minutes restriction or just in foul trouble, but what a show he put on in the fourth quarter. So anyway, you can't be jumped by a team like that, and they were. And the Lakers can't be. You can't be jumped like that by the Lakers in second night of your 6-game homestand, especially with so many home games coming up. And this is some of the concerns that you have for the team playing around the holidays, especially when you come off a long trip. You got to come out and you got to make a statement.
Yeah.
And the questions about the rotation go beyond just the backup center. Like Mike was mentioning it, like Davion Mitchell and Malik Monk are going to come off the bench. And then after that, like, he doesn't know. There's nights where some guys have looked good, like Terrence Davis has got an opportunity and looked all right sometimes, other times not so much. Trey Lyles, you could say the same. KZ Okpala, and then whatever's going on with the backup center. Like, I think that obviously the backup center is a glaring hole, but you do also need another one of those guys to have a good night, I feel like.
Yeah, I thought Kelly Oubre, like, stole Terrence Davis's lunch money. Like, and not only that, but he told him about it. Like, he had like his $3 and was waving it in his face and slapping him.
Oh, he's letting him know.
Oh, yeah.
He was chirping at him the entire night.
He got picked up on the hoop mic, the mic that's like next to the basket where you hear the ball swish through. he got picked up like 3 or 4 times where he's yelling and the entire building is hearing it, and you're like, "Ooh, that's not good." Yeah, he was talking trash nonstop. So, um, okay, so where do the Kings go from here? Because like we are getting into the holidays, and Sean, you keep bringing it up that this is a tough time of the year to play because you do have other commitments and you got family, you're distracted, but the Kings don't have time for that. At 16 and 13, they were 16 and 12. They had an opportunity to go over 500 for the 5 games over 500 for the first time since 2006. You hope that somehow this team can be attempting to do that same exact thing on Friday when they face the Washington Wizards. But if you don't get some of these games real quick, then all of a sudden you're looking at the back to back against Denver. And this 6-game homestand can turn ugly like really quickly.
Yeah, we've seen it in previous seasons. A lot less talented teams than the one we're dealing with this year. So yeah, you almost cringe as you go into it because you know what that looks like, and it can be a holiday massacre, if you will. You don't want it to be a holiday massacre. You want it to be full of joy and be festive. So I don't know. I think tonight's going to be a completely different result. I'm not expecting what happened against the Hornets. I'd be really quite shocked if they came out and did had a game similar to that where they're just giving away so many points and are really letting the opposition set the tone as opposed for them coming out and kind of setting the tone for the game. That would really surprise me tonight.
I think the same. I think that
the
same. I think that it should be a good night for them. It's also the Lakers. I would think that players get up to play the Lakers a little bit more. I know you were talking to Davion at Shoot Around today. Saw your clips of kind of the energy in the stadium with that fans being split, and I think he compared it to his to kind of big high school rivalry games and things like that. So I think there's extra incentives on this game, not only just from bouncing back from the loss, but it being the Lakers, it being LeBron, and everything that comes with just Kings Lakers in my mind. So I think they should absolutely be locked in. And a lot of it was just the defense in that Charlotte game. Sean mentioned it. There were so many dunks and layups. Like, it wasn't Charlotte hitting tough shots. They were just getting whatever they wanted at the rim. And I would hope that we get a lot better performance tonight. And I'm expecting it, like Sean said.
Yeah, I'm expecting them to come out and play hard too. And again, like the spirit of this team is really, it's fun to watch. I mean, like each and every day, like we very seldom see them like down.
No.
And we were in the locker room the other day, and strangely enough, like 6 players were in the locker room at one time. And that's the first time I've seen that this year. Or it's just kind of weird that, it's not like it used to be where there's always like 5, 6, 7 players in the locker room in pregame. I think part of it has to do with the fact that they have chapel at 6 o'clock. So a lot of guys go to chapel, and so they're not in the locker room. But still, it's an interesting vibe that this team has, and I expect them to bounce back. I expect them to play well on the homestand, and hopefully we see that play out. Look, I think this will be probably the only pod we have this week because of the holiday season, and it's not just a holiday season. I make it like an explanation thing here for folks. We would love to do like a Tuesday and Thursday show this week, but when we have practice on Tuesday and Thursday, and then we have travel times and all that stuff, it makes it really, really difficult to squeeze these in, especially with Sean having his birthday on Tuesday.
Don't you go blaming me.
No,
I'm kidding.
just we were at practice, and then again, I didn't get home until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and by that point, Sean is back at work, doing his stuff, and Brenden has his stuff to do. So once we get through the holidays, we'll go back to our standard, 2 pods a week. But just keep that in mind that we're not trying to like shortchange you here. We're just trying to survive like everyone else is during the holidays and make sure that we get everything, all the Christmas presents under the tree. All right. Do you guys have any final thoughts?
Are we going to get the rare under hour Kings Beat podcast?
Oh no, because Sean never makes his final thoughts short. He still has a diatribe about the San Francisco Giants in him. What are you talking about?
I must say I do feel better about getting that off my chest. So that was good. But
Yeah, and I think we tied it back to the Kings in a real way.
yeah,
Like this is, it's not easy, and I would love it. Like the three of us, were in the media area waiting. Well, after practice, and Monty McNair came by yesterday, and like stopped and talked to us. I guess we could mention that for a sec, but first of all, his full beard is like it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But like even he has this like bounce in his step and like a positivity about him. He's not at the showcase, the G League showcase in Las Vegas. I don't know who is, but I'm guessing they've got a fleet of people down there. But like everything, like the vibe is still good, even if you do have a bad loss. And that's what's kind of different about this year. It doesn't feel like Chicken Little and the sky is falling.
yeah. I mean, he needs to feel all the feels right now, and he's probably gonna, he'll be getting rewarded for it. I'm certain very very soon. And
We keep hearing this.
I mean, look, it
It's a weird
there's
situation.
not really.
Isn't it?
It's not really. I mean, it's like I rewind to the days of Jeff Petrie and wonder, gosh, did we ever wonder if he was going to get his option picked up or get renewed or get an extension and all the, it's like, no, they just kind of took care of themselves. Like no one really gave a shit. Like it wasn't, it was like Jeff, if you put together a successful product and the guy wants to be here and he doesn't have an opportunity, you're not, it's like baseball in Moneyball. The A's aren't trying to keep Billy Beane from going to the Red Sox, right? I think there's two sides, and they both have to tango. And one side might really want the other, and the other one might go, okay, well, let's just see what the price is 6 months from now, 3 months from now, a week from now.
Yeah, because he's not getting picked up for the same dollar he's making right now. He's just not.
Oh God, no! But who? But also, who would? Like, if you're running any business, and James, I know you've done a lot of contracting. So let's just say you're building a house for somebody. You might cut the deal. You might cut deals here and there or whatever. But if you're hiring somebody and you've got a crew, you're renewing them for different contracts, and you're going to reward them for the work that they've done. So. Or at least for some of the work you think they still have in them, So it's you're probably better with the analogies than I am, but anyone gets rewarded if they're going to get a raise of any sort, if they're getting any kind of new responsibility or new contract. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. So
yeah,
he should feel vindicated. I mean, he should feel very very good about the work he's done. He should feel very good about the situation he's in, and. Not to say he's leaving Sacramento, but whether it's here if it's here in Sacramento, great. And if it's not, I'm sure he's got plenty of people who might be in his ear from different organizations at this point. So,
yeah, I would say this too. Like there has been a rumor around Sacramento for like the last, I don't know, 2 weeks that a deal with McNair might be done and that an announcement might be coming after the holidays, after the new year. I don't know if it's true or not because I've checked in on it multiple times and been told categorically it's incorrect. But it's something that like we have been chasing, and so I would not be surprised if Monty McNair is under contract. It gets a contract extension in the upcoming future. It's just right now, like they're focused on other things. They're focused on the holidays. They're focused on the G League showcase, which is actually a big deal. It is where a lot of these deals start to take form that you see in February. This is sort of like baseball winter meetings toned down a little bit, but it's one of the true like gems of the NBA world that people don't know about. So yeah, I definitely think that there's a possibility that we'll see something with Monty sooner rather than later. Brenden, you got any thoughts on Monty?
He deserves it. Like it's worked. Some of the moves he made were very ballsy and risky, and they have paid off. And I guess you can't fully say that until they are locked into the postseason come the end of the year, and it's still TBD. Like, of course, the Tyrese deal being the big headline. Like, there's still a chance that ends up looking horrible on the Kings in the future. But as of right now, I think that the goal was to get back to the playoffs as soon as possible, and they seem well on their way to do that. So I think he's deserving, and I would love for that to happen so we don't have to keep talking about it.
Speaking of Tyrese Halliburton, by the way, did any of you have any thoughts of what Wally World had to say? Wally Zerbiak?
Like he was just
what
riding
the hell was
high
that?
on, I don't know.
Did Tyrese Halliburton steal his girl? Like, what the hell? What was that all about?
I just saw something today of Tyrese responding, and Tyrese was like, I know the name Wally, but I couldn't tell you a single team he played for.
Oh, that's cap.
It was pretty funny.
Wally Zerbiak, he is a one-time All-Star, so clearly he's got something to talk about. I thought it was weird. Yeah, I just thought it was weird. Why are you going at him in that way? It didn't make a lot of sense, and it's strange. I think Tyrese will probably make an All-Star team this year, but I also could see where he doesn't make the All-Star team this year, and he's got to prove that he can do it on more than 1 year, and that he can do it for a team that's actually winning and all that stuff. But I just thought it was a really odd situation.
I mean, James, he called him a supposed wannabe fake All-Star. Like doing a Knicks halftime or post-game show on MSG. I mean, in all the quirky things I didn't think we'd be talking about as we close out the year, I didn't think Wally Zerbiak coming at the head of Tyrese Halliburton would be one of them.
It was random. It was very random. But I totally agree. It was
There was a lot of ways that you could have just talked good about the Knicks, too. They had 3 guys over 20 points in that game. Randall's been killing it. I think that's their 8th win in a row. I don't know. Of all things to decide to highlight and talk about, like Sean said, did Ty steal his girl? It's so targeted for no reason.
Yeah, and it's not like the Knicks and the Pacers. I mean, I guess if you want to go back to Reggie Miller days, sure, Spike Lee and Reggie Miller might have a little bit of a rivalry there. Is the Knicks and Pacers still like a thing? It's not, right? And Zerbiak wasn't a part of it. I remember him as a Timberwolf most of his career. So,
he played for the Knicks.
What are we doing? No, I know, but what are we doing?
Yeah, he was a Timberwolf.
He wasn't a part of any of those. He wasn't a part of any of those big games of the Knicks and Pacers. I didn't. So I was like, it couldn't be a rivalry thing. It's just, what did Tyrese do to the Knicks? What did he do to Wally Zerbiak? That's crazy to me.
Yeah, I think he did talk some trash on the Knicks throughout after the draft process and everything, but I don't know, still out of nowhere.
Weird. All right, let's finish with final thoughts. Brenden, what do you got for us?
I don't have any final thoughts. I'm excited to see LeBron today. That should be cool. I don't know if I've seen LeBron in maybe I have, but
saw him in preseason, bro.
Did we?
When Chima Monecki put the clamps on him.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
The Chim dog put the clamps on him. Yeah,
that's right. And Chima's playing well. He's one of the best rebounders in the G League. I think he had a 23 and 18 game yesterday, something along those lines. I could be off by a number or two there, but he's been playing well. The showcase is interesting. I wish Nemi was a part of it, but
do you?
Yeah, I do. I just wish that I enjoy. I'm primarily watching G League games for those couple guys. Chance Comanche doesn't do it for me the same way that Nemi does.
No, well, and you know what? I got to be honest. Trey Burke is still he catches my eye every time I watch, but especially the way he shoots, still can shoot the ball. No, for me, the showcase is. I'll tune into some of these G League games. You're right, to see Nemi, and I do want to see him there with Stockton playing G League games. There's something about the showcase that seems circusy to me that I don't think Nemi needs to necessarily be a part of, if that makes sense. Yes, there's those G League games, but because it becomes the whole NBA world descends upon Vegas to do all their meetings and all these things, and the G League is just kind of the setting for it all. I'd rather him be here in Sacramento right now. But then when the showcase is over and they go back to just season resumes and everything, then put him right back there and let him continue, if that makes any sense. Probably doesn't, but that's...
I think I would like to see him play a couple of times and see if he can find his niche, because I do think that, again, at some point you're going to need him. At some point, if you lose Sabonis for any length of time, you're going to need him to be part of what's happening, just because of the style of play and what he can do on a court. He's up to 3 assists a game at the G League level, and he sets the biggest screens I've ever seen outside of Sabonis. Well, Sabonis thumps people. Nimi, you just can't get around him. Like, I see guards there, and they like turn. They're like, where did the other guy go? Like, that's a big man. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of torn whether I'd like to see him down there or not. Okay, so final thoughts. Happy holidays to everyone. Like, whatever you celebrate, happy holidays. That's the biggest one. Like, have a
What's your
good
favorite Christmas drink?
weekend.
Do you do like spiked eggnog or something, or what do you do?
Favorite Christmas drink? No, I'll probably just drink a lot of whiskey. I might have I might make Cosmos
Jesus.
on for the wife and people on Christmas Eve, and then I'll probably just have an old fashioned or two. My brother will be over, so we'll probably have old fashions once or twice. And yeah, just I'm a big holiday guy. I love the holidays. I love like celebrating these things with the boys and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm excited for this weekend and Christmas and Christmas Eve and all that stuff.
Hot toddy for Brenden. What do you get?
What do I drink?
Yeah. Do you have like a holiday drink or no?
No.
Hot toddy's pretty good though. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I couldn't tell you what a hot toddy is off the top of my head, to be honest.
I'll send you the recipe. It's warm.
It's
very
got
warm.
a bunch of stuff in it. Yeah, and it usually has whiskey in it. See, I could do that. Sean, what do you drink for the holidays?
Oh, I keep it Tito's, soda, splash of crayon. Pretty good. Love that.
Okay.
Is that holiday related at all? I think we're just
No,
talking
that's
general
like
drinks, right? Like,
that's my general drink.
okay.
I don't know. I don't really have like I like to I don't know the names of any of them. Sometimes they'll just put it in front of me and I'll try it, and I typically like it. A lot of them are very like cinnamony or like a lot of brandy.
Oh, brandy.
I've done like I have a love-hate relationship with eggnog. Like I pretend I don't like it because it kind of repulses me, but then like I try it and I go, that's not that bad. So I'll do that. I know there's
thick.
What's that Tom and Jerry thing? Have you ever heard of that? Somebody in the comments will probably do. It's like a mixer or something. Tom and Jerry. I don't know, but I guess it's like a holiday drink. I've tried it and it was all right.
All right.
Good
Well,
talk, huh?
I think that's going to do it for this edition of the King Speed podcast.
What'd you think of Die Hard,
let's
Brenden?
We got
Like
like 10 minutes
5
into that
minutes.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I think it
have
was
no
right about
opinions.
that time I spilt a dirty martini on someone and like
Wow.
it shifted gears. Yeah. It was.
I missed
It
the
caught
part.
the
I missed
edge
quite a
of the
party.
bar. You did miss
Yeah.
quite a party. Yeah. It
Spilled
was
the
good
drink on my
times.
girlfriend. Can you
Whoa,
believe this
really?
guy?
What's her name?
Yeah.
Oh.
Can you believe this guy?
You have a girlfriend.
I
Ken-
do, as of
okay.
late. As of late.
Yeah.
I
So
appreciate
as of, like-
I appreciate James for not being the one to announce that. But yes.
No,
sure.
it's up to you
Who announced
to
it?
announce something like that.
Nothing. That's the first
You
time I
just
said
asked him and he said yes.
it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember
Yeah.
now.
See,
I was
see,
there.
They went.
Yeah,
they
exactly.
went Kings Beat podcast official right there. It just happened.
Is this the same one that gave you the
Oh.
nickname at the Sharks game?
No. And what a question, Sean. No. It's
Yeah.
Oh.
Thanks, Sean.
Whoops.
Go
I mean, it was
full
so long ago. It was very long ago.
Going full Mike Brown out here.
It was such a long time such a
Full
long time
Mike
ago.
Brown.
Yeah. That
That's
was
a
like
long
2 years
Oh.
ago, wasn't it? Something like that?
At least.
Yeah, had to have been.
Yeah, I don't think you've dug out of that hole right there. Okay, well that's gonna do it. If you guys are
Let's get
still
outta here.
watching, give us a thumbs up. If you don't mind, subscribe to the King's Beat right here on the YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening somewhere else, please give us a rating and review. Those are always they come in handy and they help the algorithm. Lastly, join the King's Beat, thekingsbeat.com. Become a premium subscriber so you get invited to things like the happy hour, which we had last week with Mark Jones, which I thought was spectacular. Mark was really cool, and gave some really, really interesting insight into his history, into what he goes through on a weekly basis when he's covering college football and NBA and flying all over the country. I forgot to ask him how many miles a year he puts on, like in an airplane, but I'm sure it's like astronomical, like the travel that guy goes through. So that's really cool. But in order to get invites to the happy hour, you got to be part of the Kings Beat Premium. So outside of that, thank you everybody for being a, a like loyal listener here on the Kings Beat. We're growing, we're having a good time, and we'll keep the ball rolling. We'll see you next week, and we're going to take the next couple of days off and actually cover basketball and then celebrate the holidays with our families. So for Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast and Sean Cunningham from Fox 40, I am
There it
James
is.
Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. See you next week, guys.